On today's show, Alperen Sengun contract extension talks heating up and takeaways from Houston Rockets training camp day one. It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. The comments help a ton. Do a drive-by and just say, go Rockets. Sincerely appreciate it. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. We're going to get to takeaways from Houston Rockets training camp day one. We will hear directly from Ime Udoka and the rookie himself, Reed Sheppard. But before we get there, some pretty sizable news concerning Alperen Sengun and the state of his contract extension discussions, talks, negotiations, all that from some reporting from the Houston Chronicle's Jonathan Fagan, who said that there is a quote-unquote legitimate chance the team and Sengun will reach an agreement on a deal, a person with knowledge of the conversations said. Now, it's worth revisiting, piggybacking off that, it's worth revisiting Sengun's quote from Media Day about the contract talks, which sounded pretty confident. Now, and I'm quoting here directly, verbatim, Sengun said, "We've been talking. I want to get the contract. They are trying to negotiate with us, and we are trying to negotiate with them, so it's been good. We're going to make it work. We still have time, and hopefully we can make it work." That's a pretty optimistic answer for Alperen Sengun regarding the contract negotiations. Now, here's the thing. This is a pretty drastic shift, this reporting from Jonathan Fagan, from where things stood even just like 6 weeks ago. And I say that because early on, I posited the idea that, hey, yes, Sengun is worth, an extension, or a max extension, but maybe the Rockets are going the 76ers route. And they want to hold off on that. They want to have the max cap room, the flexibility next summer. And I was like, they've probably already even had these discussions with Sengun, and they've keyed him into their plans and this, that, and the other thing. Or at least I said I would have hoped that they would have done that. Somebody in Sengun's camp reached out to me to essentially confirm that those talks had not happened. And in fact, that they were largely in the dark up until recently, as far as these negotiations go, that there was like kind of just an impasse, a pretty substantial standstill as far as the talks go, because Sengun, they want a max. Like, it makes perfect sense. Sengun has proven that he is worthy of a rookie max. When you look at the other 2021 draft class members who have received max extensions, Cade Cunningham, Scotty Barnes, Evan Mobley, Franz Wagner, Alperen Sengun is at the same level or better than many of his other counterparts in the 2021 draft class who have received their max contracts. So the Rockets, playing hardball, essentially were, I guess, just not willing to negotiate on that number, and were very content to roll into the season with both Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun on kind of a prove it year, right? Show us, hey, you got this, you want your big payday, show us this season. For Alperen Sengun, it's show us that you can do it again, or show us that you got even better right before we pay you. And then for Jalen, it's prove that the March stretch wasn't a fluke, right? Now, I'll keep the Jalen talk separate from this one, but for LP, I think it's not a stretch to say that he's already earned the rookie max extension, but the Rockets are just handling things from a business perspective, and they didn't just want to hand him the money on a silver platter after just 1 year of that high-level production. And that's understandable. But then you look at it from the Sengun side of things, and I've been on record as saying this on this very show, that if I was in Rafael Stone's seat, I would have just given Sengun the max. Screw the cap flexibility down the line, what have you, because I think you make the argument that, okay, if he's going to be your best player, if he's going to be your franchise guy, if you really want to cement him in that role, then show him the good faith gesture of, hey, we trust you, we believe in you, here's your money, go be our guy, right? Be the face of our franchise, go be our best player. And then it takes the worries out of the whole situation. You can make an argument that by playing hardball with Sengun, by drawing out the negotiations all the way up until training camp and potentially up to the start of the season, that down the line there might be some animosity or some frustrations on Sengun's behalf about, man, they didn't take care of me when I earned that contract. That's a lot of conjecture. That's a lot of projecting down the line, and it's a distinct possibility. It could be something that 4 years down the line, if Sengun does reach an extension with the Rockets, it could be something that bites them in the butt down the line, where maybe he's like, oh, I didn't feel appreciated during the negotiations for my last contract, whatever. But that's just that's the NBA. That's just business, right? So I think the Rockets are doing their due diligence, and it sounds like, at least with the way that the tone has shifted in the conversation to there being a legitimate chance at a deal, I'm guessing that there's a likelihood that Sengun and his camp are willing to accept something that isn't a maximum level extension. Because, and here's the rub, is if you go into this season and, God forbid, right, worst case scenario, something bad happens, like another major injury for Sengun would be the absolute worst case scenario. And I don't think this is going to happen, but it's still on the table as a possibility, right? Maybe he regresses, right? Maybe his numbers aren't as good this season as they were last year. Could be to a number of factors, right? Style of play, or maybe suddenly Jalen Green emerges as like this, all-star caliber lead two guard, whatever, and he takes more of the offensive opportunities away from Sengun. Whatever. There's endless possibilities for what could happen this season that could impact the bottom line number of what Sengun could make on his contract next offseason. So you factor all that in, and it sounds like, at least with the way that the tone of the conversation has shifted, that maybe he and his camp are willing to sacrifice some of that money in order to get the guaranteed money right now before the season starts. So maybe something like a near max deal for Alperen Sengun. So not a true max, but a near max deal. And then that's what has the Rockets interested in, hey, well, if we were just going to let you go to restricted free agency anyways, in the hopes of, hey, if you ball out again this year, great. If somebody tries to max you, awesome. We just max the contract and we call it a day, or we match the contract for whatever the offer is, we call it a day. If the idea is to let him go to restricted free agency next summer and potentially save a little bit of money if there's not a team out there that wants to offer him a max deal, then you might as well just go ahead and accept a near max deal this offseason and give him a little bit of that peace of mind, right? I think peace of mind is a big key here in these discussions, in these negotiations. And you can argue whether it's right or wrong, whether the Rockets are taking advantage of him, whether they're putting him in a tough spot to have to make this decision, to have to sacrifice long-term money in order to guarantee himself the contract right now, as opposed to making him prove it again this season, making him have a season where he plays all 82 games, or making him go through a season without a significant injury, all these different factors. But at the end of the day, that's just business. That's the state of the NBA, right? So I don't fault the Rockets for how they're handling the situation. I am optimistic, though, based on this reporting and kind of the way where things were and where it sounds like things are right now, that they are able to get a deal done in the not so distant future ahead of the season. And the other consideration to make is, the whole crux of the argument around Sengun and not maxing him right away or not extending him right away is you had a delta of about $20 million in potential cap space based on his cap hold and what his max number would have been next summer. So you would have some wiggle room financially to do something next summer. That wiggle room is out the door if you decide that Fred VanVleet is going to be a long-term fixture of the Houston Rockets. Keep in mind, the Rockets have a team option for the third year on Fred VanVleet's contract. I can tell you right now, there is a very fat, 0% chance that the Rockets actually pick up that option on year 3. The more than likely scenario, if the Rockets do think that Fred VanVleet is a long-term fixture for this Rockets team, maybe Reed Sheppard's not ready to step into that starting role right away, or hell, maybe Reed Sheppard is ready to take over the starting reins, but they still want to keep Fred VanVleet as a backup, and he's okay being here in Houston long-term. I fully see a scenario where the Rockets decline that team option on Fred VanVleet's deal, and then they re-sign him to a new contract for less average annual salary over more years, right? Get him more guaranteed money over like a 3 or 4 year deal as opposed to a 1 year deal of a gigantic, massive salary. And that's probably something that Fred is amenable to. But unfortunately, that would also 86 any flexibility, any cap space. That would take a significant hit of any of the financial cap room that the Rockets would have to play around with next summer. So hopefully the Rockets are able to get this deal done. It's been a long, drawn-out process all summer, but to go from talks basically haven't taken place between Sengun and the Rockets into a legitimate chance that an extension gets done, that is a pretty substantial movement in a positive direction. So ultimately, we'll see what the Rockets are able to do, what the front office comes to terms with, and what the contract potentially looks like if they are able to ink an agreement. Coming up, want to get into takeaways from Houston Rockets training camp day 1. We will hear from head coach Ime Udoka as well as rookie Reed Sheppard. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. Head on over to FanDuel.com right now. Take a look at the odds for division winners, different season leaders, season awards, or the outright favorites to win the Super Bowl. Right now, the Chiefs are at plus 500, the 49ers plus 650, the Ravens plus 800, the Bills at plus 1,000, the Lions plus 1,100, and then your very own Houston Texans, top 6 betting favorites right now at plus 1,300 to win it all this season. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to dive directly into head coach Ime Udoka's media availability after day 1 of training camp and then talk about the takeaways of what he had to say. So let's go ahead and dive right in.
Well, it's a good carryover from what we've done all summer for the last month, which is guys were in shape. Got after it, competed a little bit. Added some teaching in, but really there to just kind of blow it out and get some run in and compete. Like I said, carry over from the month of what we've done in September.
Is there anything you want to see from Cam defensively? You need to obviously when you're white, because your plan is on the side of the ball, but you want to see improvement when you're too.
Yeah, just growth overall, and that's recognition of coverage of the scheme. Communication, more so off ball. I think, like you said, he was really good on the ball, but could improve off ball recognition, things of that sort. So, not just for Cam, but other guys. I think that's one of the hardest things for our young guys is communication off ball, and he brought that cover.
Understanding that's the first day of training camp for a rookie, how did Reed adjust to the change from what was being done in the offseason to what you're asking now?
It was good. He was fine. I think he's got a good taste of it through Summer League and what we've been doing in the last month. So didn't do a whole lot of things schematically today that he hasn't seen. So it's just like I said, getting out and playing, and he's been fine as far as that. It's going to take all our young guys, new guys, a little bit of time, but he's a smart guy with high IQ, very cerebral, so he catches on pretty quickly.
How was today in terms of, was it review and a first day kind of catch up, or is it jump right in and doing the same sort of work that you want to do 2 weeks from now, a month from now, so on?
No, I'd say we'll get way more in depth in the next few weeks, but it was a good review of some of the things we did last year. We watched some film on areas where we improved throughout the year, throughout the season last year, but also just to get after it a little bit too. And so these guys have done a ton of work in the off season, had a very long off season, so they're in great shape to just get in, and we don't really have to ramp them up. They're ready to go as far as that, but we'll get much more in depth as we go in the next week or two.
What's our beneficial is to have so many players on the roster that can play so many different positions?
Yeah, it's great for both sides of the ball. Obviously, defensively, it gives us versatility to feel comfortable switching and guarding multiple positions, but offensively opens up a lot as well for the playbook where guys that can handle screen, play on and off ball. Fred can do all those things. Obviously you saw last year. So it's not a lot of weaknesses there, and you can use guys in a variety of ways.
You mentioned last season kind of keeping things kind of simple throughout the year, just very basic principles and stuff. How quickly do you think you're going to get into some more advanced stuff?
We will at times. I think we saw the things that worked really well for us, and we want to add other things. But there are some minor tweaks and things that we did see, regardless of plays and play calls that we liked. And I think just increasing pace, offensive rebounding, and some of those simple things that aren't necessarily a new play, but things that we really saw that worked well post All-Star break.
We're having such a deep roster. How much of training camp preseason will go into who will be in the rotation and who won't be in the rotation?
A little bit of both. I think we have a unique schedule as far as the 2 games in 3 days, and then a week off to kind of reevaluate things, and two games in 3 days to end it. So it'll be a little bit of both. Where we just look at different lineups and those things early, have a week to reassess, and then kind of zero in on what we want to do in the last 2 games.
How much did it help to have a little more space too, with multiple courts? Do you have any drills or anything that you want to do with having now 2 courts instead of maybe 1?
Yeah, you can just get to everything a little bit quicker. Where obviously at McNeese State we had the 2 courts there, and so we could do some of that. But once we get back to Houston, we're a little bit limited with what we can do, and it's great to be able to run multiple baskets and stations and do some things like that. And so we can compete at a higher level with more guys and more teams on the court.
You mentioned the film session earlier. What were some of the specific things that you guys got into?
What worked well last year and what didn't. Looking at the numbers overall, and some of the consistency areas where we had some winning and losing streaks, and so it's impressive when you look at some 5, 6, and 11 game winning streaks, but there were too many 3 game losing streaks in there. So we want to self-correct and adjust the things quicker on the fly, where we're avoiding some of those ups and downs. But we looked at the competitiveness, things I asked of them last year, how we kind of overachieved in a lot of those areas. But now it's time to zero in and be more consistent across the board. Sacrifice is going to be a big thing with our group. The depth that we have, it's not going to be everybody's night each game, but playing for your teammates, making the right play on both ends of the floor. Just look at the big picture and how we can take the next step. Thank you.
Okay, so honestly, some goodies in there from Ime Udoka and his day 1 kind of training camp recap, I suppose. The Rockets did it. They had a 45-minute film session, day 1 of training camp. And as Ime highlighted, right, kind of reviewing some of the things from last season, both good and bad, that the team was able to achieve. But I want to go through here and kind of highlight some of the things that stood out. So first off, he was asked specifically about what he wanted Cam to be working on, but he extended the thought about Cam to the entire team, talking about off-ball defensive awareness and communication on the defensive side as kind of one of the early points of emphasis. Also, one thing that I thought stood out, and this is a really important line here, when asked, or he mentioned specifically when asked about kind of all the different guys and having guys that are capable of playing, different positions or playing different ways, he specifically mentioned Fred and Amen as guys who are capable of playing both on and off the ball. I thought that was pretty huge. Obviously, Fred is a guy that can play on and off ball, right? Fred steered the ship a ton last season. He also slowly kind of migrated and moved into more of an off-ball role as Jalen Green got more comfortable last season running the offense. Amen Thompson was almost exclusively an off-ball threat last season, being played in the dunker spot, being played offensively as the center often at times, setting a lot of screens, rolling hard to the rim, operating out of the short roll situationally as a passer. Amen was barely on ball last season. So to hear Ime reference Amen as an on-ball threat this season, piggybacking off of the question that he answered from me at Media Day about how they plan to use Amen, about his long-term vision for Amen, about him being a guy that has multiple tools and being able to be plugged into a variety of situations, I am increasingly more optimistic about how the Rockets are going to deploy Amen Thompson this season, and that we will indeed see more on-ball Amen Thompson reps this year. Again, that's the benefit, that's the beauty of having so many different guys that can be played both on and off ball. In specifically, Reed Sheppard, right? Yes, Reed Sheppard is going to be the de facto backup point guard to Fred VanVleet, but when Reed Sheppard and Amen Thompson share the court, Reed does not have to have the ball in his hands in order to be effective. Amen Thompson can have the ball in his hands and be that downhill freight train, collapse the defense, kick it out to shooters, that terror in transition that he can excel at being, while also still having a complimentary guy next to him in Reed Sheppard, or vice versa. Let Reed Sheppard have the ball, have Ime Thompson set screens for Reed Sheppard and roll hard to the rim, or have Ime Thompson playing out of the dunker spot while Reed Sheppard is running the offense. There's so many different ways that this Rockets team can go this season. That, to me, is maybe the most exciting thing that Ime Udoka had to share with us. He also highlighted the other points of emphasis offensively, right? Talking about increasing the pace. So it definitely feels like this Rockets team is going to play a faster brand of basketball right out of the gate this season. Also highlighting offensive rebounding. That's going to be a big one because, look, the Rockets were one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the NBA under head coach Steven Silas. But you know what? They were also a terrible defense because if you send too many guys crashing the offensive glass, and if you don't have enough discipline to be able to get back and guard in transition, you're going to give up a lot of points. So it'll be interesting to see how the Rockets balance attacking the offensive glass harder this season while also still maintaining a top caliber defense. That's always an intricate balance. And the best teams in the NBA, they're able to do a little bit of both, but you have to have concessions somewhere. Oftentimes, good offensive rebounding teams have poor transition defense. So how much of the defense is Ime Udoka willing to sacrifice in order to increase their second and third chance opportunities offensively? Last point of note from Ime. He said that sacrifice is going to be a big thing with our group. With the depth that we have, every night isn't going to be your night. And I do think that this, illustrates that it's going to be more of the same this season, where Ime Udoka is going to run things like a meritocracy. If you're having a bad game, your butt might be on the bench to close out a game. Doesn't matter if you're a starter, doesn't matter if you're one of the key rotation guys coming off the bench. If you don't have it that night, if you're not bringing it, then if you're not one of the best 5 guys to give him a chance to win a game, you might not be in there. And I'm very curious to see, again, how much leash guys are going to get this season, right? If you're one of the starters, if you're Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Sengun, whatever, if you're having a bad game, how much does Ime roll with a guy who is struggling, say, in the first half of a game, first 3 quarters of a game, right? When does he ultimately pull the plug on a player and go to the next man up in the rotation to see if they have it instead of another guy? And so that's going to be a delicate balance, right? If you're the head coach, you got to push the right buttons at the right time to get the most out of your guys. And if a guy's struggling, then how does he adapt to that situation? That's going to be one of the biggest kind of question marks for this team this season. They've got an abundance of talent. And if somebody's not living up to what they need to be, if Dillon Brooks is struggling and Ime Thompson and Tari Eason are thriving, how long do we go with Dillon Brooks still in the starting lineup before Ime potentially makes a switch? There's all sorts of things to consider this season, all sorts of directions that this Houston Rockets team can go. But coming up, want to get to the Rook himself, Reed Sheppard, what he had to say after his first official day of training camp and, being an NBA player, the adjustments that he's had to make from college. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's go ahead and dive into what Reed Sheppard, the tax man IRS, had to say after his first day of Houston Rockets training camp.
So you've been on this court a lot for the last month or two. Did it feel like a first day today?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was great having all the guys on the court at the same time. You had all the coaches. It was a really good day. Amazing courts, I guess. So, it was a great first day. Great to play a little bit, just run up and down the floor, get to play with the guys, so it was a lot of fun.
How'd you feel about how you adjusted to a training camp practice compared to what you've been doing?
Yeah, I felt good. It's not much different than what we've been doing. You come in, you play, you get your workout in, you play some pickup, so it's similar to that, just a little longer. So it was really good. It was a fun day.
Making the transition from college to pro, how have you tried to find your role, go about finding your role, especially earlier on in the training camp like this?
Yeah, I think just come in just knowing that you're a rookie and it's not going to be given to you. You have to earn it no matter what, and come in not expecting anything. Just come in and be willing to do whatever it takes to get on the court and help the team win.
Have you gotten any feedback from the NOAA shot tracking system yet?
Yeah, I love that. We actually use that at Kentucky all the time, so I'm very familiar with the NOAA system.
Can you give us a little information on kind of how it works or the feedback that you do get from it?
Yeah, I look at it from all three of the things. It's arc, depth, and left and right. 45, 11, 0 is the perfect shot. So I usually look at it for the depth. If you miss, it's normally 6 or lower, and if you make it or front rim, it's like 7 to 9, and then like back rim swish is normally 9 to 11. So I kind of look at it for the depth the most.
How much does the defensive scheme change for you coming from college to the NBA?
It hasn't much. In college, we were switching a lot, and down here, this is what you do. You just got to stay in front of your man. You kind of got to figure it out. It's going to be different because you're guarding better players, stronger players, more athletic players. But just figuring it out and just trusting your teammates.
Were you on the ball or off the ball today, or some of both?
Yeah, both. I mean, just guarding the ball, whether it's pick and roll or guarding off the ball, either one.
I meant offensively. Were you playing point, or were you 2? Or again, both?
Yeah, both. I mean, just having the ball in my hands and then also filling the corners and filling the wings.
Does it make it easier or more difficult to sort of make the transition in that you're learning almost 2 jobs? Running pick and roll is very different from going to a corner.
No, I mean I think it's basketball. I had to do it at Kentucky with Coach Cal. We had a lot of really good guards, and going on ball, off the ball. It's pretty easy playing off ball here because you got Fred that's handling the ball, Aaron, whoever it is, Jalen, whoever has the ball, they know how to play basketball, so they make the game a lot easier. So it's just been a really fun first day.
Was Fred talking as much as he said yesterday he would be to you?
Yeah, he was talking the whole time, just encouraged me. But I mean, yeah, he's a great leader and great role model for sure.
Besides your shooting, what other part of your game think is going to be easier for you to translate from college to the NBA?
I think just playing basketball the right way, just knowing how to make the right basketball play. It doesn't matter what level that you're in, it's still basketball at the end of the day. So it's going to be different. I don't know how it is because I've never played in the NBA, but at the end of the day, just going out and just doing what I know how to do and just playing as hard as I can.
Reed Sheppard hitting us with some thoughts after his first official day of NBA training camp. And man, I've got to tell you guys, Reed is like, you can tell he's been like super duper mega like PR coached. Like he knows how to answer questions. And it's even funny to see like sometimes like, a veteran reporter like Fagan kind of digging to get a little more out of Reed. And he's just so like at times kind of reserved with his answers, right? He's not going to overstep or give like an incorrect answer or say something out of pocket that he shouldn't say or give more than he wants to let on. Like it's funny seeing it because different players operate different ways, right? Sometimes you get guys who are going to throw you an off-the-cuff comment like every single media availability that they get, and then other times you get guys who you almost get nothing out of because they're kind of almost guarded in a sense. And I don't want to say Reed is like guarded, but it's just it's just funny to witness kind of happening in real time. But I do think that there, a couple things that Reed said that stood out, talking about having to earn his role no matter what, right? That's a great mentality to have. It's the same mentality that he's had, dating all the way back to his introductory press conference, right? He's not coming in here expecting to be given anything just because of his draft slot. And that's an incredible mentality to have, right? Yeah, he could have gone to a dumpster fire team and been given a starting role and gotten 35 plus minutes a night and, had all the usage, primary option, all that stuff. But it's not the hand that he was given, and it sounds like he's accepting that with the right mentality, right? He's going to go out there and earn his spot, and he's got the talent and the poise and the capability to do so. Elsewhere, I was really excited to hear him kind of break down the Noah shot system that, I've heard a little bit about for the Rockets. I took a video of it and kind of posted it on social media. So if you're interested in kind of seeing what it looks like and watching the tickers kind of change in real time, you can go take a look at that video. But to have him kind of break it down for us, I mean, this dude is like a shot scientist, right? Like he knows, he's like, okay, it measures arc, depth, and then the left-right angle of the shot, right? So 45, 11, 0 is quote-unquote the perfect shot or a splash, I guess, if you will. And And then for him to specifically be talking about, I look at depth mostly, right, and kind of breaking down the numbers. Like if it's a 6 or lower, then you're falling a little short. 7 to 9 is kind of right in the middle where you want it to be, and then or I apologize, 7 to 9 is a little like front rim kind of area, and then 11 or so is on the money, or 11 to 13 is the back rim area. It was just really cool to have him kind of break that down for us. As far as how the system kind of works. And one thing I didn't get a chance to ask, I'll follow up on this on another day of training camp, but I saw the ticker working while they were doing their free throw drills. So I'm curious if the ticker was measuring their free throws as well, if it's only, if it was, I don't know. I want to dig a little deeper to find out how all that works. As an aside, it's kind of sad that like Kentucky, obviously a top tier basketball program in the nation, had access to this technology, and the Rockets literally only just got access to it. Like if that should paint the picture of just how far behind the Rockets were from a competitive angle as far as their training facility goes. And again, monumental upgrade. Shout out to the Fertitas for getting it done and bringing the Rockets into the 21st century of basketball operations with the new training facility. But elsewhere, just talking about, he did mention, playing alongside other ball handlers like Fred, Jalen, Aaron, and then this goes counter to what we heard Ime say about Amin Thompson being played on ball. So take that with a grain of salt. Maybe I was reading too much into Ime's quote, or maybe I'm reading too much into what Aaron had to say about playing alongside other guards in the guys who do handle the rock, or maybe those were the primary guys handling it for day one of training camp. But I am curious your thoughts from what Ime Udoka had to say, from what Reed Sheppard had to say after day one of Rockets training camp. Unfortunately, no footage from day one of camp. And this was, I will say, and tuck this away at the end of the episode, when I hypothesized what training camp in Houston might mean compared to training camp in Galveston or Lake Charles or whatever, I was worried that we might not get as much unfiltered access. So there's still 4 more days of training camp, and I'm hopeful that we will get some level of scrimmage footage in the upcoming days, but didn't get anything from day one, unfortunately, just some free throw shooting drills, nothing of significance, unfortunately. But with that, I want your thoughts on what Ime had to say. I want your thoughts on Reed Sheppard. And I want your thoughts on the Alperen Sengun contract situation. Let me know how you're feeling about all that in the YouTube comments. But as always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.